Casinos never put up a sign that says this. You won't hear it announced on the casino floor. But quietly, without ever saying it out loud, casinos benefit when players don't know when to stop. And that's why some experienced players do something that sounds completely backward at first. They quit early, sometimes after just a few spins, sometimes after 7. Not because they think 7 spins is lucky, not because they believe in magic numbers, but because of what happens psychologically and mathematically after those spins. This video isn't about beating slots. It's about understanding why stopping early can feel like winning more, even when the math never changes. To understand this, we have to separate 3 things most players confuse: winning, losing, and session control. Slot machines don't remember you. They don't care how long you've played. They don't know if you're due. But you do remember, and casinos design everything around that fact. Every slot session has a hidden danger point, not a specific spin number, but a mental shift. At the beginning of a session, players behave differently. They're cautious. They notice losses more. They still feel in control of their money. But as spins continue, something subtle changes. Losses start to feel normal. Wins start to feel smaller. And decisions stop being deliberate. This is where the casino advantage quietly grows, not through odds, but through behavior.
Now let's talk about the idea of 7 spins. 7 isn't special. It's not lucky. It's not programmed. What matters is that very short sessions often end before the brain adapts to loss. Most slot losses don't feel dangerous at first. They feel harmless. A few dollars here, a few spins there. But after enough spins, players stop evaluating outcomes individually and start evaluating the session as a whole. And once that happens, quitting becomes harder. Short sessions avoid that trap. When someone plays a small number of spins, one of 3 things usually happens. They lose a small, controlled amount, they hit a small win and walk, or nothing memorable happens and they leave. All 3 outcomes are low emotional investment. That's the key. Casinos don't make money from short, emotionally neutral sessions. They make money from extended sessions, where the player becomes psychologically attached. This attachment doesn't come from winning big. It comes from time. The longer you sit, the more your brain wants resolution. You want to get back to even. You want to end on a win. You want the session to mean something. And that's where most money is lost. Early quitters never reach that stage. They don't give their brains enough time to normalize loss or chase recovery. This is why some experienced players set hard spin limits, not bankroll limits. Because bankroll limits are emotional. Spin limits are mechanical.
7 spins is just one example of a number that's easy to remember, easy to enforce, and psychologically short. It forces a decision before the session pulls you deeper. Now here's something most players don't realize. Casinos track time on device, not just money wagered. A player who wagers $20 in 2 minutes is less valuable than a player who wagers $20 over 40 minutes. Why? Because longer sessions create more exposure to loss, more chance of chasing, more emotional attachment. And emotional attachment increases average loss over time. Short sessions break that cycle. They don't beat the casino. They refuse to engage long enough to be exploited psychologically. That's the difference. At this point, some people push back and say, but slots are random. Stopping early doesn't change anything. And mathematically, that's true, but casinos don't rely on math alone. They rely on human behavior reacting to math. If you flip a fair coin once, you don't care about the result. If you flip it 100 times and track losses, emotions get involved. Slot machines are the same. Short sessions reduce emotional buildup. Long sessions amplify it. That's why disciplined quitting feels like winning, even when it isn't.
Because control itself feels like success. And once players experience that feeling, something else happens. They stop chasing. And that's the moment casinos quietly lose their biggest advantage. At the end of part 1, we arrive at a critical question. If quitting early is so powerful psychologically, why don't more players do it? To answer that, we need to look at what happens after those first few spins, and why staying feels easier than leaving.
Why players stay too long?
The real reason players don't quit early isn't hope, it's momentum. Once a session starts, stopping feels like interruption rather than a decision. Casinos design environments to remove natural stopping points. There are no clocks, no windows, no clear signals that say, this is a good time to leave. Instead, the only feedback you receive comes from the machine itself. Lights, sounds, near wins. These cues don't tell you to stop, they tell you to continue. And the longer you continue, the more your brain adapts. This adaptation is subtle. After a few spins, each loss still feels like a loss. After many spins, losses blur together. Players stop remembering individual outcomes and start remembering patterns, even when no pattern exists. This is where players start saying things like, "It's been cold for a while. It has to hit soon. I just need one good bonus." None of these thoughts are irrational, they're human, but they only appear after enough exposure. Early quitters never reach this phase. They leave while their perception is still sharp. There's another factor casinos rely on: reinvestment. Small wins don't usually lead to quitting, they lead to more spins. Players often say, "I'll play with the winnings," but winnings aren't separate money psychologically. Once credited, they feel like house money, easier to risk. This extends sessions far beyond the original plan. Short spin limits prevent this loop. If you decide in advance that you're only playing a few spins, a small win becomes a natural stopping point instead of fuel. This is why some players appear to win more over time. They don't win bigger, they win less often, but keep more. They exit before reinvestment erodes gains. Casinos don't promote this behavior because it conflicts with their core model. Their profits rely on repetition, duration, and emotional escalation. The math advantage is small per spin, but enormous over time. Time is the multiplier. 7 spins, 10 spins, even 5 spins. The exact number doesn't matter. What matters is that the number is decided before play begins. Once play begins, decision-making degrades. That's not a flaw in players, it's how the brain works. Casinos understand this. That's why loyalty programs reward frequency, not restraint. That's why bonus structures encourage staying longer. That's why machines celebrate near wins more loudly than real losses. They're not trying to trick you into thinking you won. They're trying to keep you engaged. Short sessions cut through that engagement. They turn slot play from an emotional experience into a transactional one. Spin, observe, leave. No chase, no story, no attachment. Now let's address the biggest misconception. Quitting early does not increase your odds. What it increases is your control over loss exposure. If someone plays 7 spins a day instead of 200 spins once a week, they often lose less, not because of luck, but because they never allow variance to snowball. Variance hurts most when sessions are long. Short sessions cap damage. This is why casinos don't fear players who believe in lucky numbers. They fear players who set limits before playing, ignore near wins, treat slots as time-boxed entertainment. Those players are predictable, and unpredictability favors the house. At this point, it becomes clear why quitting early feels like winning. It's not about money alone, it's about leaving on your terms. And that psychological victory reinforces discipline. Players who consistently quit early often report something interesting. They enjoy slots more. Why? Because frustration never builds. They never experience the emotional crash that comes from long losing streaks. They don't need redemption spins. They don't need recovery. They just leave.
and leaving without regret is powerful. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. If short sessions protect players psychologically, why do casinos still make it feel uncomfortable to walk away? Conclusion and call to action. About 1,000 words. Casinos don't stop you from quitting early. They just make staying easier. Comfortable chairs, continuous play buttons, endless incentives to continue just a little longer. None of this is accidental. The hardest moment in gambling isn't losing, it's stopping while you still feel okay. That's why early quitting feels unnatural at first. You're breaking momentum, you're walking away without closure. And casinos depend on that discomfort. But once players push past it, something changes. They stop associating gambling with stress. They stop attaching meaning to individual sessions. They stop needing to fix outcomes. And that's where the illusion of winning more comes from. Not from jackpots, not from secret strategies, from loss avoidance. In gambling, avoiding unnecessary loss is closer to winning than chasing improbable gains. 7 spins isn't magic. It's a reminder. A reminder that you don't owe the machine anything, you don't need to justify leaving, you don't need a final spin. You're allowed to stop whenever you choose. Casinos never say this out loud, but the players who last the longest understand it instinctively. They don't play to win big, they play to stay in control. And control is the one thing casinos can't program into a machine. If this breakdown helped you see slot play differently, subscribe to the channel. Like the video if it changed how you think about gambling sessions, and share it with someone who might need to hear this before their next casino visit. Because understanding how casinos really work doesn't ruin the experience, it gives you back the power to choose when it ends.